Cool. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined by Josh Ramos. We met over on Threads. We have a bunch of mutual connections. So I'm going to hand over to him, let him give a quick little intro, and then we'll get into it.
Cool. Thanks, man. Hey, guys. My name is Josh Ramos. I am a true threader, a day one threader. Threads has been quite the journey and experience so far. We're what, 2 months in? Going on 2 months
Yep.
here soon. Um, and it's been a whirlwind. I'm super excited to connect with you, Matt. I've had the pleasure of connecting with a handful of other really amazing people, all creators and entrepreneurs, et cetera. So this has been a fun journey so far.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of crazy to think that it's only been 2 months. It feels a lot longer than that. Um, and also quick at the same time. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of relationships have been built over the last 2 months or so. So would love to kind of jump into your background. I believe you work at Microsoft. Would love to hear a little bit more about that, about yourself, how you wound up there.
Oh man, yeah, that's quite a journey. I'd probably say that my path was a little bit different. I mean, everybody's path is unique, right? Um, you know, not too long ago, it was a big requirement that everybody has college degrees, MBAs. Very few companies 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago were hiring at scale employees without some level of formal higher education. Uh, and I dropped out of college probably later than I should have. Uh, for a long time, I thought I was a bad student, and the reality was that I'm actually a fantastic student. It took me a long time to realize that, and thankfully, I got to a place where I realized that I'm a great student so long as the subject matter that I'm interested in really matters to me. Uh, for better or for worse, I'm ADHD. I've had to learn some natural coping mechanisms around that. My son gets a lot of that from me as well. And once I realized that I was a really great student and that I could become great at whatever I was really passionate about, um, it became pretty easy for me to dive into. I said pretty easy. It became easier for me to dive into a lot of my strengths. The only caveat there is that if I don't care about it, I don't care about it, and it takes a lot of effort on my part to do the things that I have zero interest in. Um, if inevitably, if it's a responsibility, I'll get to it, but it's a conscious effort. So I started working in tech sales. I had my first job at Sprint. I went from working, I guess I'll take a baby step backwards. I went from working in a trailer at a gym, doing pre-sales for a club that wasn't even open. Got them to a pretty significant ARR before they opened. And I won't mention names here just because I didn't ask his permission, but a good friend, a great friend, and now really close mentor of mine. He happened to be walking into this trailer that I was in pre-selling gym memberships. There was like 15 people in front of him, 15 people behind him. Sold him. I ended up closing most of the people that were in there. And unbeknownst to me, he like hung back to watch me sell and talk to other people. And so when he was done, he came up and he just said, "Hey man, look, I don't want to be weird, but I hung out, and I think you have some really natural uh, people skills, some really natural sales skills that you just can't teach. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I think you'd be wasting your talent not pursuing something else. And I work in technology, and can I buy you coffee and can we talk?" I had no idea that like that moment um, would be like a pivotal point that would catapult me into where I'm at today, which is always interesting, right? It's like hindsight's 2020. If you could have a crystal ball and look into the future, you know, you think it might go a certain way, but how things played out, I've had an immeasurable amount of grace and good fortune uh, that has led to me being at Microsoft. So the short story is, after that moment, I spent 7 years in other roles outside of Microsoft. The first 2 years was mostly telecom. Nothing against telecom, like people in the industry. It wasn't for me. I wanted something that was that challenged me in a different way, and so I naturally gravitated into the world of infrastructure and what people know as the cloud. And I worked in a side of technology that was co-location infrastructure for a long time, and inevitably that turned into me trying to get a job at Microsoft. It took me 4 years of applying at Microsoft to get an interview, get farther down in the interview, and then actually have an offer. So it was a journey, but there was a lot of just persistence. I knew that I wanted to be at Microsoft for a long time, and I love what I do for Microsoft. I love the company, love the culture. There's always things, right, when you're in a big machine that are tough, but it's a different kind of challenge. I'm in strategics now too, so I have a different visibility to a different scale of business operations, management, forecasting, selling internally and externally in one of the biggest technology companies in the world. So that's some fun learnings there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's rare that you hear people actually take multiple attempts at one company. So that's pretty cool to hear that you're able to stick it through and actually progress and then ultimately wind up there. So when you say you're in strategics, are you saying that like you're kind of at a higher level of sales now, where you're working on like a strategy behind growing the business, specifically the cloud business?
Yeah, so strategics for Microsoft in the sales world is a little bit unique. Um, there's a every company is different. So I have a little bit of a perspective from externally versus internally now that I'm on the other side of the veil, so to speak. And just because a company does a lot of business with Microsoft doesn't necessarily mean that they qualify as a strategic account. Typically, it's a combination of a number of things: um, opportunity size, market share, strategic alliance with Microsoft directly at a partnership level. That's well beyond me, but that's at the very, very top of the business. So I have the benefit of being able to be on one of those accounts. Um, and it's, you get a different respect for being inside of not only being inside of Microsoft, but they're being on an account that's labeled as strategic. Uh, there's a lot of headcount that's dedicated to one customer. And then there's a lot of support around that team. I think we have 5 dedicated people, and then we have another 5 or 6 people that are assigned, directly assigned. And then there's on any given day of the week, there's countless other people that touch a strategic customer. So it's an incredible amount of collaboration internally, right? You can't be a one man or one woman show. It's a lot of collaboration, uh, which is because of where I came from. Learning to collaborate at the scale of Microsoft was a challenge that I had to overcome really quick. Because when you're working for a smaller technology company or a smaller company in general, you get to wear a lot of, you get to own a lot of things because you have to. So you have a lot of people that become generalists and they end up doing 5 or 6 roles, or they end up kind of playing in 5 or 6 different roles in order to get something done. Whereas in Microsoft, you have the different challenge of, okay, I've got all these people that I have to work with, and then I have all these people that I can work with. And how do I leverage that in a fashion where I can maintain control to the best of my ability of the business while not becoming the bottleneck for the business. So that's a delicate balance, but it's a lot of fun. I think I'm getting the hang of it.
Definitely. Um, yeah, so I would love to kind of let's go down the tech rabbit hole a little bit.
Cool.
I know we chatted a little bit beforehand. AI is obviously the focal point of probably every tech company and consumer at this point right now, especially this year, last fall into this year. So kind of curious your perspective on it, where you see it impacting personal, professional lives, and kind of what you see happening in that space right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I'll start with this thought, which is every single innovative technology that the world has said this thing is going to radically change everything, and exponentially overnight, hundreds of thousands of jobs will be lost, and all of this stuff is going to be horribly bad really, really fast, or horribly or greatly great really, really fast. I think everything that is great, anything at all, but especially anything that is great, takes much longer to have the kind of exponential impact that people think it will have. What's different about AI is that we're 20 plus years now into this era of the internet, right? So things inherently move faster than they did 20 years ago. But I don't think people realize the amount of underlying infrastructure that at an institutional level, at a cultural level within those institutions, how much has to change in order for these technologies, whether it's AI or blockchain or crypto or NFTs or any of these topics, there's an incredible amount of institutional change and individual change that has to happen within corporate culture for these things to take hold and really have like a truly dominating effect on our day-to-day lives. Uh, Blockchain is huge. There are there are way more companies not using blockchain than there are companies using blockchain. I work for one of the largest cloud providers in the world. We've been talking about cloud for going on 20 years now, 17 years now, and there are an immeasurable number of companies that still own all of their data centers. They still want to own hardware. They still want to have hands-on keyboard inside of a data center floor, spinning up servers on a physical rack instead of hosting it in a public cloud. Uh, so there's all these variables, right? So I say that to say things take longer than we think that they will. That said, AI is going to be a lot of fun. Um, with everything that's with everything that has the potential for great good, there's always the potential for really bad actors too, right? There's some rumors and some, I won't call it drama, but some things circulating around large language models that have zero security and compliance built in intentionally for bad actors. So one of the biggest opportunities, I think, for all of us is going to be one of the biggest opportunities from a business standpoint, and one of the biggest things that we'll have to focus on as end users, as consumers, is our personal security and our identity. Right? You hear stuff around. It's rare, but there's talks around people getting voice calls with AI being used to replicate some a loved one's voice. Those types of things are real, and how we protect against that stuff is going to be interesting. So I think there's a massive opportunity for entrepreneurs and technology companies to find a way to better secure individual identity. On the flip side of that, I'm also an optimist. I think there's an incredible opportunity for us to see a massive amount of innovation that without AI, without machine learning at scale, really just wouldn't be possible. I think about industries like the medical industry, and I'll use this example because my daughter has special needs. She has a rare genetic condition, and I'm my wife and I and our entire family, we sit in this very interesting place where my wife was a medical professional before she came home, and we thankfully have a different level of resources, just knowledge and education through her that benefit our family a lot. Um, but there's a lot of gaps in medicine, both at the corporate level, and there's a lot of gaps for people that need medical care. Uh, Not even as simple as knowing what to ask. And so I see a huge opportunity for enabling people to be able to learn faster and make better informed decisions for their lives and their loved ones. You want to get really cool and creative. I think it's going to be fascinating when we start talking about proactively taking genetic screenings for ourselves and proactively taking blood tests for ourselves and uploading that into an ML model that can then customize nutrition supplements and medical recommendations based on our specific data. Stuff like that is going to change is going to change quality of life for humans around the world. So I think AI, we're still early, right? We're in the top of the first here. There's a lot of really great use cases. If you're a marketer, if you're a if you're in business, if you write email scripts, if you're looking for content ideas, if you're making ads and you're trying to optimize things, there's so many use cases right now where it just makes sense to learn how to use the tool. And I think that's all we can really do. The bigger stuff around what about this and the fear mongering that tends to happen around any kind of innovation, I think we have to do our best to control what's in our control and use it for the good that we see in front of us.
Yeah, I think you brought up a few great points there. The first one, and I saw a great tweet about this. I'll try to find it and link it down in the show notes. But how every major innovation, like you just said, there's always the fear mongering around, oh, it's going to take away X amount of jobs. We have to be worried about ethical concerns, but each of those innovations ended up creating more jobs than it took away. Like, yes, are there less farmers than there are because of the machines we have? Yeah, but now like we can produce food at such a massive scale, there's new industries around that. Like, there will be new jobs that come out of whatever jobs are lost from AI potentially. And quite frankly, with the way that the AI tools that we have right now, a lot of it is just going to allow more like human input and human genius to be enabled, because you're not going to have to do the copywriting, you're not going to have to do the lower level tasks. It's going to allow you to kind of elevate what your final output is, because you have to spend less time on maybe more menial tasks that AI can automate. And I agree with the optimist point as well. I tend to lean as an optimist, especially when it comes to technology. I think that there's going to be bad actors no matter what. There's bad actors now. There's going to be bad actors 100 years from now. No matter what tech exists, like they're going to be there. But I think there are so many right now. A lot of the AI is focused on, like you were saying, content generation, automating scripts, all that type of stuff. AI, art and video. But I think some of the more advanced ones, like you were mentioning in medicine, are going to be huge. That genetics one is such a great idea, also. But I'm excited for it, and I think it does take time. And we're in like the hype cycle, kind of like how we were with blockchain. The last few years beforehand, it'll take a long time. I mean, the internet came out in the early '90s, but until it reached Web 2, social media, all that stuff, it wasn't until the mid 2010s. So there's definitely a delay. It'll probably happen faster than maybe 20 years, but for anyone that's worked inside a big corporation, like you were saying, these things take a lot of time to work their way through the system. Yes, they might be having conversations about it, but before it reaches, critical mass, it's going to be years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be years, right? And realistically, right, I'm very practical in all this stuff. It'll be decades, right? I mean, I think we're at a place now where, I would comfortably say that the year 2035 we'll see a much bigger impact around AI, right? It's 12 years from now. The year 2040 will look dramatically different than 2035. I think, the compound effect of these things as legislation gets passed, as culture changes within companies, as a younger generation starts to get a little bit older and move into the workplace, and these things that are controversial and new for middle-aged, right? These things are going to be normal for people my age, for people that are younger than me. So all these things come in waves. I think that 2040, everybody will use AI
Yeah.
in some fashion, right? And they'll use it in ways that aren't seemingly impactful, but it's the little things often that make the biggest difference. Like the ability to tell AI to place an order for your favorite pizza, and
Mm-hmm.
AI will know what that is. And there'll be APIs on the back end that you don't even have to call Papa John's or Pizza Hut. You can just say, order this pizza, and it'll verify it for you and it'll do all the work on your behalf. If you're a small business owner, if you're a solopreneur, if you're an early stage, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, you can do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Rather than getting stuck in the how do I send this, how do I build an email template? How do I build a script to cold call, or how do I build an email campaign? You can very quickly get unstuck and build momentum and even build a model that helps you fine tune what works and what doesn't work, right? There's so many great things that you can do now where it just makes sense to try.
Yeah. I mean, this is a completely speculative question, but I'm just curious. In your opinion, do you think there's going to be a certain magnitude of difference in terms of like B2B or B2C? Do you think one of those markets is going to benefit more? I know that like more recently in the last like 5, 6 years, like SaaS B2B has been like the thing to be doing, like selling to enterprise softwares, like those are the clients you go after. Obviously, Stripe, some of these other companies more so went like the B2C route where you're really looking at the
Mhm.
long tail. But I'm curious, from your perspective, being in tech, do you see a certain opportunity emerging more than one or the other, or is it really going to be an even split there?
I mean, it's a good question, right? And this is purely speculative from, based on my observations. Uh, there are a lot of companies, big enterprises, that are putting guardrails around OpenAI and any type of AI internally. One of the biggest concerns there is loss of intellectual property. There's already a handful of reports that have come out where there's suspected loss or suspected sharing of IP. And what companies have to remember is that any open model, right? Not just OpenAI, but any large language model that's available to the public that you log into and feed data, it's learning off of that data, right? So when you sign up for that, you are volunteering your personal insights, your data, whether it's code or images or other things that those large language models learn from. So there's that trade-off, right? So at the enterprise layer, and not to like plug Microsoft here, but the reason why Microsoft the reason why Microsoft made the investment into OpenAI, other than being a strategic investment, is that for at an enterprise layer, there has to be a different level of security around IP, data privacy, data sovereignty, et cetera, that doesn't exist in publicly available large language models. So we are wrapping a layer of security around that to help make AI more palatable to large enterprises, where security has to be at the forefront of every decision that they make. I said all that to say at the enterprise layer, it's going to take much longer. At the consumer layer, we're already seeing it.
Hmm.
It's already happening faster. I think there's an incredible opportunity for there to be a bigger conversation around personal security. Like I've had this idea of like I know I'm not the only one here, but there should be an app that allows you to have family and friends create safe words for to avoid scams in a private network, right? In a private app where you can add your family, similar to like Find My iPhone, right? But you can create safe tokens, safe words, where you say if you receive a phone call that's suspicious, or if you receive a text from a number that's suspicious, that's claiming to be somebody that it's claiming to be a loved one, you should be able to validate that, easily. So I think there's a big opportunity around personal consumer security there. And then everything else, is kind of just how do you want to leverage the tool? Like what do you want to what how do you want to train? And I say train specifically. Like what is the end goal you're working towards? Is it writing better content? Awesome. Is it writing better emails that actually convert into closed meetings? Train a model on that. I think a lot of those opportunities are like those are top of mind. Those are things that everybody should do. But some of the bigger stuff I think is going to take time because the reality is like large language models as a whole is something that's harder to break. And what I mean by that is you have a lot of people that are building commodity apps on top of ChatGPT.
Hmm.
The problem with that is that those commodity apps are just leveraging an API that backends into ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the IP. So theoretically, if you build an app on top of ChatGPT today, and all of your IP is tied into a standard large language model, you have no real value, right? You might be able to make a quick buck and flip that, right? But the reality is a lot of those standard use cases are going to very, very quickly become commoditized. We're already seeing a lot of that today. So I think a lot of these, like, people see ads for, get AI on your phone because ChatGPT didn't have an app for a while. And so now that ChatGPT has an app, unless you're providing an exponential amount of value, if you are training a large language model on a specific thing to serve a specific industry, that's different. But just leveraging a standard large language model is not going to be a long-term win for a lot of
Yeah.
people that are trying to do something in AI today.
Yeah. Um,
I went off there. I hope that I hope that
no,
that
that
whole
was
thing
no, that
made
was good.
sense.
It did make sense. It actually brings up a good point. One of the podcasts that I listened to, the All On Pod, they were talking about AI as well. This is same similar discussion about all the plugins that are being built on Chat. In terms of if we're talking enterprise value or like startup value, like if you wanted to capture some of this AI value yourself by starting a company, whatever, the real value is going to be in the data sets that these models can be trained on, right? Because like you're saying, the IP, anything built on top of ChatGPT, like that's open AI. Like you don't own any of that. You are just borrowing their tech to create your product. The real gold mines in the next probably 10, 15, 20 years is going to be places like Reddit, Quora that have these insane data sets that will be able to train on specific questions, specific topics. Um, I mean, barring HIPAA, I don't know what the medical field will be like, but again, that's going to be another huge area where data is going to be a gold mine for value. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, you know, you have some industries like the medical industry where HIPAA is such a big thing. A lot of these industries move slow, right? Finance moves slow, medical moves slow, especially when you operate at the scale of, you know, when you start getting into the scale of tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars, depending on the size of these institutions. The bigger and more complicated it is, the longer it is, for the most part, the longer it is for them to innovate. And the challenge that a lot of companies have across any industry, especially in the medical industry, because of compliance, is there's a lot of red tape that they have to get through in order to make any change, let alone truly innovate. So, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, the ability for you to go run a data model against your genetics, like that should happen. It's going to require somebody new to come in. And by the way, like that idea, as great as it is, you're going to need an incredible amount of capital
Hmm.
to get something like that off the ground. Uh, so, because of reasons like that, it's just going to take longer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's maybe switch some gears here.
Cool.
Jump into some personal development, goal setting. I really like our chat beforehand talking about defining success for you. That's
Mm,
something that I have more like recently started exploring, but I find it pretty interesting. So however you want to start that topic, feel free.
yeah, that's an interesting one. I think no matter how much you think you're in control of your own world, there's a lot of programming that happens within all of us from the time of conception all the way through early childhood. There's a lot of stuff that we don't remember that molds a lot of behavioral patterns, um, for better or for worse, right? And success is one of those things where, for as today we are better than we were 50 years ago as a society, right? But there are still many, 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 many people, many young adults, teenagers that are being force fed into the traditional system. Go to school, get good grades, or else go to college, get a degree, or else go get a corporate job with benefits and put money into a 401k because this is what me and your granddad and their great granddad did. Or else you're going to have to deal with the societal pressure of a loved one disagreeing with you or having to explain it at a dinner, et cetera, et cetera. There's all of these outside forces. And I think before we can really start to define success for ourselves, if I was talking to myself, knowing what I know about myself now as 30-year-old Josh, if I was talking to myself at 16, I would very quickly learn what it actually meant to know who I am as a human being, like to become very conscious of myself. What are my likes? What are my dislikes? And not to feel ashamed about them, right? There's a lot of just expectations that is, you're going to go in this path because this is what your mom and I did, or this is what we did, this is what so and so did, and this is what success looks like. And you have a lot of that downward pressure from all sides, whether it's a boss or a parent or a loved one or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a spouse. There's all of these outward voices. And in order for us to begin defining what success looks like for ourselves, we have to learn how to turn those voices off and really tune into ourselves. Because even myself, I said for a long time that I didn't care about what everybody else said. I think a lot of people default say these things because it feels good. It's like I'm in control. Like I know who I am. Like I don't care what anybody thinks. Yet when you actually pull the layers back, you realize that a lot of the decisions that you make day to day are for everybody else around you. And when you can begin confronting those things and really being objectively honest with yourself, is when you're kind of forced to ask the question. It's like, why am I pursuing this? Why am I doing this thing? Is this really what I want for myself, or am I just repeating what's been passed down to me? Like really taking the time and giving yourself space to have that self realization within yourself then frees you up to say, well, if this isn't what I want, what is what I want? Like what are the things that interest me? And you know, people that are growing up now are in a very different position, right? Because if you told somebody, if you told a 13-year-old, if you told my parents when I was 13, hey, your kid can make a living playing video games, they would have kicked you out of the house so fast. They would have been like, get this horrible influence out of here. That's a joke. We don't want you home playing video games until you're 30 years old. Now, if you're a parent like I am, if my son came to me and he was like, Dad, I want to be a gamer, I'd be like, let's figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a path, right? So my hope is that over time, people will learn from the mistakes of the people before them and they'll become aware of them and they'll be more open-minded. But all of that begins with us giving ourselves the space to define success for ourselves, which means we really have to challenge the institutional stuff that's been put in front of us from day one. You kind of have to poke against the system and say, why do you believe this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you believe this? Like, the world isn't this little bubble of my zip code. There's a lot of other stuff outside, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And I think when you start pressing up against the walls of whatever institution you're in, is when you can start to flex a little bit and open your mind to new ideas.
Yeah. Um, I'm a big fan of that. Since I was a kid, was always kind of asking the questions of why. And, just because other people did it and just because it worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. And I myself, I'm 24.
You're
So
young, man.
yeah, everyone keeps saying that when they come on.
Yeah, dude.
Um,
You're young. I'm young, man. Like
yeah, yeah.
this whole idea, like I don't have my life. I'm super thankful for where I'm at.
Hmm.
Like I want to be clear, I'm very thankful for where I'm at. Am I where I want to be? Absolutely not. Like there's so much more. Like if this is where I'm at 30, I have like my goals, what I thought were big goals now are like very small goals. Like my
Yeah,
goals are like exponentially increase. But like we've got to stop putting like 24 is young, 30 is young, 35 is young, 50, you hopefully you still have, decades left of your life.
Yeah.
We have more time than we think that we do. We just shouldn't waste it.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Um, and I think questioning is definitely a foundational start for anyone. I actually have had conversations with my parents because when I was, a teenager, like esports were just kind of coming up, and I'm huge into video games, but like it really didn't have the infrastructure when I was younger. But it is crazy now, like how fast that happened. And again, like you said, there, you know, even conversations with my own family, you know, it's eye opening to them when I explain, people on YouTube make $10,000 a month. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "No, people literally make tens of thousands of dollars for posting videos online." And they're like, "What do you?" I'm like, "I promise, like, it's real." Like,
Yeah.
it's so new to them, and I think like the younger generations, it's so much been a part of like my and I'm sure your like daily life that it's so normal to us, but for people who are 20, 30 years older, it's very foreign. And
Hmm.
those are the ones who are still setting, what the expectations are and putting the societal pressure. So it makes sense why, you know, it's just getting passed down, but and you really don't realize how many decisions you make for other people until you really like sit down and ask yourself a few questions because thought that I didn't make decisions for other people and like you every day I'm kind of learning more and more how many little big medium everything in between you are influenced by a lot of different forces. And it's definitely a learning curve and a skill. I would say you get better at it over time. But I think that's a huge point that people can take home for sure.
Yeah. If you can learn to be objective as early as possible and like really understand what objective means. Objective means you don't matter. Like really remove yourself,
Hmm.
which is hard, right? There's a lot of self-awareness that has to happen for a person to say, what would I do if I was in this same position as another human being? Not having my upbringing, not having my influences, for better or for worse, not having these family members in our life. If you took me, right, my parents left the inner city of New York for a number of reasons, poverty, right? If my parents didn't make the decision to move away from the Bronx, in some of the toughest streets, and take and raise a family in Florida, start a family in Florida instead, even though we didn't have the world, we had much more than they had growing up. But if my life started in the Bronx instead, would I be the person that I am today?
Hmm.
I like to hope that I'd find my way here, but the reality is to think that I would be completely immune to that environment and the impact of that environment would be ignorance. So if you can learn to think objectively about your situation and try to remove yourself from it, like really be selfless, like take self out of the picture and navigate your world that way, you'll unlock a whole lot really fast. And I hope that we can have a conversation. Like my son, he's 5.5, and I hope I'm already having deeper conversations with him at 5.5 than I was probably having when I was in my early teens. So
Hmm.
I hope that when he's, approaching 13 years old, that he's talking about the world the way that I am now, because I'll save him 2 decades of learning.
Mm.
Like when we think about legacy and impact, like if we can shorten the learning curve for the people that come after us around all of the things that took us years, maybe decades to learn, we free them up to have a much better holistic life and also have a better impact on people because that'll have a ripple effect on their friends that are their age, and then it'll just trickle backwards. Anyways, I took that to like I went like really deep there, but yeah, man, objective thinking like is at the core of all of it.
No, deep is always good. That's the point of this format. I really like the way you framed that, especially that last bit about the ripple effect I don't have kids yet, but I do think about that all the time. Is that I would love to shorten that learning gap, that learning curve. I also think it's happening in real time every day. This podcast, like every form of content, that's really there are a lot of people who are shortening a lot of different gaps. The information's out there. It's just up to you to find it and apply it.
Hmm.
And I think that's great. And I think like you're saying, we probably won't even realize the effects of all of this for a decent amount of time. Some of it is instant and some of it, but I think a lot of it is a long tail change for the better. Um, Obviously, we are still realizing adverse effects of social media and yada yada, but
Of
you know, there's
course.
always going to be some downside to things that provide upside.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah. It's a fun one.
Yeah, it is.
It's the yin and yang, right? I think what we focus on, what we choose to focus on matters, right? If, we can get into law of attraction and all that other
Hmm.
stuff. Um, if you focus on good, you will see mostly good.
Hmm.
And if you are just pessimistic and you're looking for the bad and everything because you need to feed, it's an addiction. There's something about negativity that's just, it's easily addictive. And in the inverse too, like if you're constantly laughing and smiling, that's addictive too. So I think we should, as a society, make a conscious effort to smile, laugh, and be kind, because the ripple effect of that is insane.
Yep. Yeah. Um, that actually made me think about your profile picture. Always makes me smile on Threads, just because it's just like the like such a happy profile picture.
Oh
Uh,
man.
that's kind of what I pictured when you said that. But it's true, and you know, I notice this a lot in public. Like, and I put
That's
this out
funny.
on Twitter and Threads a couple weeks ago, where like I think like one of the most contagious things for myself at least is like when I see like random people in public laughing or smiling, like that makes my day on the spot. Like that day, no matter what else happens, I don't know what it is about it. I just think that there's nothing better than getting to see someone else experience that happiness in that moment. I think it's great, and I definitely think it's contagious. And with the way that media, technology, internet, social media has all impacted us, there's a lot of negativity, and people get stuck in these echo chambers of fear and anxiety. And I get it, but you gotta break out of them because there is so much good happening. You're just stuck in a cycle right now, and you got to break out of it.
Yeah. You know, we spend so much time in life being told how to think about institutions, about people, about life, about right and wrong, debating, right and wrong and the definitions of right and wrong changing, over time. Like there's all these things that we have, again, that downward pressure, like external voices. And if you can silence those, which might literally mean like turning off your TV, unfollowing every single toxic person in your feed, like we do ultimately get to choose what's in the algorithm for us.
Hmm.
Like if you can realize that, if you're getting fed negativity after negativity after negativity, unfollow every single person that is and block them, like completely block them, and then intentionally find one or two positive, optimistic, forward thinking, gratitude centered people, whether it's me or you or Gary Vee or whoever it is, and obsessively engage with that content.
Hmm.
Because then you'll get different stuff in your feed.
Yep.
Like we have a lot more control than we think.
Yeah. Um, I actually did a standalone episode on that. I think I called it like content diet or something. And I said, look, listen, yes, does the algorithm have some sway over what it might suggest to you, but you are in way more control over between following and what you engage with. Like that determines what the algorithm wants to show you. And we obviously know, listen, like these companies, they're trying to drive engagement, and they realize that polarizing views, polarizing opinions, very polarizing situations that elicit emotional reactions. That's what drives up user time and engagement time. But you can just take the time to really curate your feed, who you're following, what you engage with. It can make a big difference in what you see on a daily basis for sure.
Oh yeah. And if you want to take that a step further, not to like keep us here,
Yeah, go for it.
you should also have that same filtering for the people in your life.
Mm.
And I mean that, like, IRL, you should filter the people in your life. And that might mean you have to make some hard decisions about people that you completely cut off or create some different boundaries with. Um, there's a period of time where I had complete separation from a very close family member. I won't get into it because thankfully all of that's on a very mended, healthier path. Um, and I have nothing but respect for every human being. So, but we should guard our peace. Like, we have to. Um, you have to start taking accountability for the things that create stress and anxiety in your life. And what I mean by taking accountability is taking control. You can ultimately say, you are no longer allowed in my life. Or I need to kind of change how I engage with you. I need to change, what I choose to take advice from you on. If you can do that, your circle might get smaller, but the people in your circle will be monumentally better for you.
Yep. Yeah. Um, I totally agree. I think, you know, my circle has gotten dramatically smaller over the last couple of years, partially due to COVID, partially due to whatever, friends moving here and there. Um, and I agree that the quality has gone up. And I think you realize that as you get older, when you're younger, social circles tend to be a lot larger. But, you couldn't reliably rely on all those people to have your best interest at heart. Um, and I don't think people realize how much agency they can exert over those types of things in their life, and they really can. Um, so for anyone listening that feels like they don't, you do. You do have that agency, and you can filter both your online friends and your IRL friends as well. Um, I would like to dive into the last portion here. Similar topic, but kind of what your vision is for maybe, let's say, the next 10 years, and what is your mindset to approach that, to achieve that? How do you handle challenges? How do you handle striving for goals? Obviously that's loaded, but I would like to kind of dive into those different aspects.
Yeah. I have so growing up I was in the arts. I was in the performing arts. I was a theater kid. I love music. Music was my first passion. I want to figure out, I don't have the answer for this yet, but I want to figure out how I get more back into that side. I'm a creative at heart. Love to sing, love to make music. I love to do photography. I love to make videos that I post on Instagram and LinkedIn now. Um, I just want to create stuff. I think for me, the foundation of the rest of my life, but especially the next 10 years, right? Because for me, 10 years from now is 40.
Mm-hmm.
And my mindset is very focused on, first and foremost, inner peace at all costs. And I'm super radical on this for myself. I need to be at peace with who I am as a person. I need to be comfortable, ultimately comfortable and unapologetic in my own skin, not at the detriment of others, right? But for my own, uh, no fear of judgment, right? Again, kind of tying back to, we all make decisions subconsciously or consciously for other people to a certain extent, for better or for worse. Um, I need to be at peace with myself, which means freeing myself from the expectation of being the ultimate source of other people's happiness and fulfillment. That's a rabbit hole, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
big pillar for me. Um, Another one is really leaning into my strengths. Like, I think I've got a better grasp of what my strengths are. Yes, I'm ADHD, so that plays a role in how I kind of ping pong between things. But for me, I think one of the superpowers that comes with that is being inherently curious.
Hmm.
And I want to triple down on my curiosity. I don't want to put myself in a position ever where I tell God, myself, the universe, the people around me that I am only doing this thing. I'm going to focus the next 10 years of my life, for better or for worse, unflexible, only on this thing. Could that go well? Maybe. But I think ultimately I'd be limiting my experience. I want to be as adaptable and flexible as possible, striving towards, I posted about this the other day, striving towards an ultimate North Star of freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, career freedom, to pursue and invest in the things that fill my cup and have a positive impact on other people around me, whether that's financially, intellectually, spiritually, etc. That's a broad answer, and I give that answer because I truly believe that we are all
Figuring it out.
still figuring out who the heck we are.
Yeah.
And 35-year-old me, I'm way 30-year-old me versus 20-year-old me, like dramatically different human beings. 30-year-old me versus 29-year-old me. And like a lot's happened in the last year of my life, so I can like put my flag in the ground on this. I am 10x the human being right now than I was this time last year. So if I carry that forward, I have no idea how awesome an unlimited 35-year-old version of Josh is. Well, I'm not gonna put a cap on it. I have some interests.
Yeah.
For a long time I was, very much, like a lot of people. It's like I'm not gonna go work for the man. I now work for the man. Like I work for the man. And there's a lot of really great things that come with that. I hope that uh, I get as many years as I'm meant to have at Microsoft. If that's 5, amazing. If that's 10, awesome. If it's 20, because opportunity and life just navigates me in that direction, fantastic. If there's an opportunity that I can't see right now, where one of my ideas now come to life or something else comes to life 3 years from now that turns into its own thing and I end up leading a company and building something, amazing. If I make all the money and then realize I need to take a year off to like really continue to delve into who I am spiritually, awesome. Like I don't want to put like hardcore guardrails around that could limit me. But as long as I'm being at peace with myself, as long as I'm creating, whether it's uh, creating art, right, in the form of music, video, content, whatever, and as long as I'm providing value to the people around me and I'm moving towards that North Star, I think I'm good.
Yeah. That was a pretty great answer. I will say I'm also ADHD, so a lot of what you said resonates with me. I really like how like what you just said about those guiding principles. I think that is often probably a better quote unquote goal to set than what you're saying about like, I don't want to confine myself. Because, I mean, again, my journey's short, but in my shorter journey, like 3 years ago, I was in a completely different field, a completely different mindset, totally different. But there are certain things that you can say, like you said, inner peace, creativity. I know that I genuinely enjoy creating, and like you said, listen, I also have like a 9 to 5 where I work as a product manager. And I love it. And I think that on the internet, there's this whole like hustle culture of like people who are like pro career and then anti career, and like you can't exist with the two. I think that that's not true. You can have a 9 to 5 and also really enjoy creating, and listen, if it turns to an opportunity, it turns to an opportunity. Um, but
And sorry, so finish your thought.
yeah, um, and I just think it's important for people to identify a few things that make you feel alive and make you feel like you're becoming a better version of yourself, rather than saying by 30 I need to have $1 million, or by 30 I need to do this, by 40 I need to do that. I think those are limiting, and it sets you up for almost, I don't want to say a negative outlook, because I think goals are important and measurable goals are important, but in terms of like life goals, what if your life takes a completely different route, and because you were limiting yourself with that end goal, you couldn't even see the opportunity that presented itself. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, go feel free.
No, no, 100%. Right. I mean, and I've been guilty of this too. Right. I'm not perfect by any sense there. I think if you're able to open yourself up and define, like, I think that my thread the other day, like, what's your North Star? I
Mm-hmm.
do think we all have to really define our North Star, right? And the North Star is a little bit different than success. Like, success, I think you can measure in milestones,
Mm-hmm.
right? Success is very measurable, whether that's a dollar, whether that's, a role within a company, whether that's a physical obtainment, a watch, a car. Like, the success, I think, is measured in those milestones. For me, a North Star is like, what is the ultimate guiding principle that you are constantly striving towards that's bigger than you
Mm-hmm.
and will mold that? What's your why? What, like, at the core? And like, the why can't just be money, because there are plenty of people that are super miserable that have a crap load of money.
Yeah.
Like, and it's also, the idea that you have to be an entrepreneur to make six figures or seven figures. I'll just tell everybody that watches this right now, overwhelmingly not true. Like,
Yeah.
not true. That, like, are there is there the potential for a higher uncapped earnings as an entrepreneur? Generally speaking, sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables to that. I know plenty of people that work 9 to 5 that make 350 to 500K a year that have incredible lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if, when and I get this too, because 10 years ago, I was nowhere near where I'm at now. If you're making 35, $45,000 a year, you think that, all right, the only way I'm going to break out of this is by becoming an entrepreneur, because that's what the world tells me. Again, like, back to outside voices. The world is telling me I have to become an entrepreneur. But what if you could be the best dev in the entire world and move up to become an enterprise architect within a company over the course of 5 years because you're so talented at that thing? And by the way, you make $500,000 a year doing that.
Yeah.
That's an amazing life.
Mm-hmm.
That's an that's an amazing life by anybody's standards. The top 1% on money is 440K a year
Yep.
in the US. So this idea that you have to make $1 million a year by the age of 30, we've got to help people stop setting themselves up for frustration. There are a lot of variables to making that caliber of money. Some people fall into it faster than others. Good for them. But we've got to really put some context around these things, because it's easy to just throw some stuff out and say, this is my goal. And I think that can be damaging for a lot of people. Sorry, again,
No.
I took us a little down the path there, but
No. No, I love it. And I think that's true. I think everything you just said there is true in building off of what I said. And I think, I think this all relates back to, defining success for you, which I think is important because, again, like, success, and I agree. I actually like how you framed that. Success is like more measurable. North Star is like more of a principle. I totally agree with that. But I also think people, like, an exercise to do is like, what does success look like to you? For some people, it's like 3 houses. For some people, it's 1 house, and it's like an amazing family with 2 kids. Like, you need to sit and define. And I think that's why a lot of people, they get rich and then they're miserable, because they just considered the money aspect. And yes, obviously, does having an infinite amount of money make your life infinitely easier in terms of financial ease and security? Of course. But, like, if you didn't reflect on all these other things that are important to you and paid zero attention to it, how are you going to have the life you want? Yeah, you have money, but, like, you don't have the loving relationships you want. You don't have whatever it might be, the intangibles. You really have to define what you want your life to look like, not just what you want your professional success to look like.
100%, right? Professional financial success, it's one of the pillars: health, wealth, love,
Mm-hmm.
happiness, spiritual peace. And I forget where I heard this. For some people, the best they can do is have everything. there's a very small percentage of people where they want nothing at all. And that's incredibly freeing. I think, like a lot of people, I spent a significant amount of time early on, out of just ignorance and idolization, putting certain things on a pedestal. I wanted to have a Rolex. I have that. It's really not for a lot of people. I love watches, and that's not a brag. Like, I don't care. If I had to sell every single watch in my collection to get my daughter medical care tomorrow, that would save her life. Done. Heartbeat. Wouldn't even think twice about it. None of it matters. I like watches, so like it's my thing. I buy them for me. I don't buy them for anyone else. But people put these ideas, of success looking like a car or a certain amount of money. I have the things that I said I materially wanted to have at 30. And as fun as they are, you get to that point, and I'm thankful that I have an amazing wife and amazing friends close to me that called me out on this, where I'm at in my life, that forced me to have the conversation with myself. What next? Is it just going to be more stuff? You can only wear so many watches.
Mm-hmm.
You can only drive one car at a time, which, by the way, I love my car, but it sits in the garage 3 days, 4 full days out of the week. I love it when I drive it, but it's not who I am. My watches aren't who I am. At some point, everyone has to confront, who am I as a human being to myself, that extends far beyond what we do and what we have. And that's a big, I'm in that journey. Like, I don't have it all figured out, but I think we need to make that the goal more than have $1 million by 30 or drive a Lamborghini by 28.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that reminds me, and I've experienced this anecdotally. I've heard it from other people. I actually just heard about it again on a podcast this morning, but they were talking about the differences in culture, mindset, philosophy, however you want to phrase it, between like the U.S. and other countries abroad. Specifically, is between the U.S. and Italy. And it's funny because, like, listen, I grew up my whole life in the U.S. Like, and this is 100% true. It's like probably one of the first questions you're ever going to ask someone new when you meet them is like, "What do you do?" Right? Like, what do you do? And the person who's talking, they were saying how like they go to Italy all the time, and they're a very wealthy individual that's running the podcast, but they said like the best conversations they've had, and they have them way more in Europe, is like that doesn't even come up, or it's like the 30th thing that they talk about, because that's just not the focal point. And in the US, like that's just been drilled as the focal point, as like your career defines who you are, what you do for work defines who you are. And it's just not the case. And listen, some people want to be like that, and some entrepreneurs, type A's, people, listen, like I myself have experienced that, and part of me doesn't necessarily dislike that, but to be cognizant of it is important, and to realize that you aren't just what you do. I think that's an important distinction for people.
yeah, I think when you realize that you're gonna die and nobody's gonna freaking care what
Yeah.
nobody's gonna care anymore. I think when you have that context to say, my life is really short, can be really short. It can be really long, but it can be really short. And there's a solid chance that within a few years of me dying, a lot of people are going to forget about my work.
Hmm.
Then you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Like, you truly have to. And I don't think ultimately we're meant to just work and have the big bank accounts. You're not going to take any of it with you. I think we should strive to be financially free. I think we should strive for options. I don't think that any of those things are inherently bad, but they're definitely not who we are. I took us down another little rant there, just on the value of life, and it's not, it's not measured in what we do or what we have.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever read the book Die with Zero.
I haven't.
Highly recommend it. Basically, Spark Notes is, it just talks about, achieving financial freedom, but yes, you want to like leave. Maybe you want to leave a safety net for the next generation, but like you were kind of saying, you can't take it with you. And of course, you don't want subsequent generations to like struggle, but at the same time, and there are a lot of wealthy individuals that have actually like openly stated this, how they're not going to leave their kids with anything, because sometimes that's a better gift than giving them money, because they really get to find their way in the world and learn to be productive rather than just have it handed down. But side note is just that you live your life to achieve financial freedom, but you should really enjoy your life and find the experiences what makes you feel like you're living, and not try to just stack your chips in this ultimate pile that when you die it's just going to get pushed back in the middle anyway. So
it's going to happen really fast too.
Yeah.
But I think people I forget, I don't remember who it was, and it's no shade, right? Over Threads, somebody made the comment of, within 150 years of you dying, nobody's going to remember you. Within 10 years of you, unless you're a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. He was just, I think, going to turn 45 like in the last couple of days. Like a Michael Jackson, a Steve Jobs, those people have a really good shot of being in the history books and having people talk about them for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Like, good shot. But that's like the top 0.0001% of human beings. Yeah. For 99, even if you make $1 million next year, if you died the year after, or I died, it's real fast. So yeah, you should think differently about your life, because you can make all the money in the world, but if you die, it's just going to circulate back into the machine.
Yep.
It's not how we should measure things. If, not to get like really spiritual, but I tend to do this. I think when we all realize that we are all consciousness, that we are all energy, experiencing the universe, experiencing life for a very small, like immeasurable, so small fragment of time, and that everything is interconnected, and that ultimately the journey is the journey. The journey is the journey. Mm-hmm. It's not how much money did you make in the journey. It is how much did you expand your human consciousness, which means ultimately, what was your impact on other people? How will they remember you? Because I think that's going to have a much bigger ripple effect than your money. Not that you can't make $25 billion and give it all to a charity and improve lives. Like, if that's your story, like, do that. Like, that's a noble thing. But I think the things that people will say about us around a fire pit after we're gone, when they're reflecting on our impact in their lives, is way more important. I hope I can make all the money that I can make, and I hope that I can live comfortably, and I hope that I can give my kids options, but I'd much rather know that like the people that I truly deeply care about and other people that I just meet along the way will have mostly really good things to say about me.
Yeah. I think that's really important, and all very true. We definitely, overemphasize how much our legacy existence will probably last after us, and live way too much focused on that, when in reality it really doesn't matter. And it is about the impact, the relationships. Life is about people, I think. And if you're not doing things with people, for people, there's a lot of lack of meaning in a lot of things that you do. Mm-hmm. We are running up to time here, so I wanted to give you opportunity, any closing words, closing remarks, anything you want to leave the audience with. The floor is yours.
I actually wasn't really prepared for like a closing remarks thing, so I might sound a little bit repetitive here. I genuinely hope that people have I know it sounds a little bit cliche, right? When I post these threads and I'm like, I'm wishing you blessings on blessings on blessings. I hope that if you see this, you have an overwhelming amount of blessings in your life. And I think the biggest thing that I can wish for everybody that sees this is that you have an overwhelming amount of inner peace and self-confidence and faith in yourself, that no matter what you do, it will be measured in your impact on the world than the money in your pocket. I hope that everybody gets financial independence and financial freedom and all these things, but I truly, genuinely hope that people find peace and joy. I think that journey is much more interesting. Outside of that, I think a part of that is the work that we do, right? Work is a part of life. And work doesn't mean the work that you do to make money. Work means the work that you do to improve as a human being. Some of that is how you make a living. A lot of that is how you show up for yourself and the people around you, the community around you. So yeah, man, I hope that if nothing else, out of all this, that there was some value for people. If you want to connect on Threads, it's Mr. Josh Ramos there. It's pretty much the same everywhere else. I'd love to connect and be ridiculous over Threads on a Thursday night. But it's really great to be on here. This is my first podcast, so I hope that I hope that I set the bar decently high for others to follow, for me and for myself as well.
Definitely. Really appreciate you coming on. I'll link down to your socials in the show notes. But no, this was probably one of the deeper podcast conversations I've had, which I'm always striving for. That's kind of my goal for the future of this is to get a little bit deeper with people. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on, Matt.